Hi there, we'll get started in just a moment. We'll be getting started in just another minute or two. Hi, thank you so much for joining us here today to talk about inventing the future with female leaders at Foursquare. We are so excited to host you all as members of the Girls Who Code community. My name is Ariel and I lead B2B marketing here at Foursquare. I've been with the company over 5 years now, and I'm so excited to be helping to spearhead the partnership with Girls Who Code. Here's a quick look at our agenda for today's session. First, we'll give you a quick overview about Foursquare. Then we'll share more about technical interviewing process at Foursquare and our recruiting team's tips for helping you ace the interview process. We'll have a great panel discussion with some of the female leaders at Foursquare with time for questions for all of you at the end. So please be sure to drop them into the chat as they come up throughout, and we'll have plenty of time to address them with our great panel of experts here from our team. A quick round of introductions of who you'll be hearing from before we dive in. Today, you'll also be hearing from another Ariel on our recruiting team, and then you'll hear from Ali Rossi, who leads Foursquare's technical women's employee resource group here at Foursquare. And she's going to be moderating a great panel discussion. We have Tansy from our engineering team, Pooja on product, Anna also from the engineering team, and Andrea on product design. So really excited to hear all of your perspectives and advice and practical guidance for navigating a career in tech. So now I'm going to quickly go through a little bit about Foursquare in case you're not familiar with us. For those of you who may not know Foursquare, Foursquare is the leading location technology platform, and we are in the business of deeply understanding places and movement, using technology to understand where things are and how people move throughout the world. Our tech helps businesses use location to make more informed decisions and ultimately drive business success. You may recall us from inventing the check-in, and we are incredibly proud of our consumer app origin, but we've evolved quite a bit over the past 13 years to become the leading location technology platform. We saw an opportunity for other businesses to leverage our unique technology, and that's why we decided to think bigger. And so some of the biggest names in tech, from Uber, Snap, and Twitter, are using our tech today. Our proprietary technology harnesses the power of places and movement, and we then solve for business problems using our data, our developer tools, and our software applications. Here's how we're delivering value to businesses using our core technology, and we are all about making Foursquare accessible everywhere, addressing the needs of a variety of different personas for many different use cases. So our product suite spans the needs of CMOs, CTOs, COOs, and really have a whole suite of offerings here at Foursquare. What makes us unique is that we pride ourselves on having the utmost accuracy in our location data, and we get location data right. We also have the right scale and pride ourselves on putting privacy first in everything that we do. We make our data accessible and easy to use and pride ourselves on being the largest independent location technology platform. Our technology ultimately unlocks the power of places and movement. So that's a little bit about us. And now I'm excited to hand it over to Ariel from our recruiting team to talk about careers at Foursquare and how to make sure that you thrive during the interview process.
Thanks, Ariel. Hi, everyone. My name is Ariel, and I'm a technical recruiter here at Foursquare. I recruit for all of our full-time roles in engineering as well as our engineering internship program. Today, I'm going to talk to you about what it's like to work at Foursquare. So you can go to the next slide. Go to the next slide. Foursquare has a very strong, vibrant, flexible culture. We actually offer a flexible work environment where employees have the option to work fully remote or from one of our office locations in New York City, LA, San Francisco, Seattle, or Chicago. A few fun things to mention are we have an annual talent show at the end of every year. Super, super fun. We have different Slack channels related to dogs, cats, cooking, sports, TV, you name it, we have it. We also have executive team meet and greets, which is really awesome. And then a few weeks ago, we just had a company-wide offsite where we had 450 employees come to New York where we all got to get together. So that was super fun because we got to connect with other employees in our Singapore office, our LA office, and all of our offices in New York. So that was really exciting. Go to the next slide. Here are our leadership principles that we have. You can find them on our website as well as our interview prep guide that we send out to every candidate that interviews with us. Hire well, coach hard is definitely one of the principles that stands out to me, just because we really want to bring in employees who are eager to learn and coach them to be set up for success here. You can go to the next slide. Another one of our leadership principles is in all things diverse. So at Foursquare, we celebrate people from all walks of life and see our differences not as a weakness, but as a competitive strength. So one way that we embrace diversity is through our awesome employee resource groups. So here are a list of our ERGs. And joining our employee resource groups is a really good way to connect and meet employees from other teams as well. So just to name a couple, we have Foursquare Technical Women, Fem Square, Foursquare, Formation, Foursquad, and Squarence. Go to the next slide. Foursquare also has some really awesome perks and benefits. So we have unlimited PTO, we have a 401k match, we have summer Fridays, we have a shutdown from Christmas to New Year's, which allows all employees to recharge before the new year, which is awesome. And every employee that joins the company is given $500, which is a learning stipend, so you can take a course or a workshop of something that you might be interested in. Go to the next slide. So at a high level, this is kind of what our technical interviews look like. So typically they're live coding, system design, and a high-level technical deep dive of projects and some behavioral questions. You'll see our high-level tech stack here as well: Java, Scala, Python, Clojure, and Ruby. And again, all of this is sent out to every candidate that interviews with us, just so you'll be prepared for the best interview possible. You can go to the next slide. This outlines our engineering, data science, machine learning interviews. So first is a 30-minute hiring manager interview, which is just a high-level conversation about the role. If you move forward after that, it's a 60-minute technical interview. So you'll be coding a question in real time with a member from the team over HackerRank. If you move forward to the final stage, it's our virtual onsite via Google Hangout. So typically there's 3 technical sessions, each 60 minutes through HackerRank, and that consists of either a system design and live coding rounds. Typically there's also 1 session with a manager where you will be asked situational questions and different behavioral questions. As far as our engineering management interviews, it's basically very similar. So the hiring manager interview is centered around your background in management philosophy, which is around 60 minutes. And then the virtual onsite is 3 different management sessions with different members from the team, each 60 minutes, and then 1 technical session with a system design question. You can go to the next slide. So our product management interviews are also very similar. So our hiring manager interview is around 30 minutes, and that assesses candidates' general product experience. If you move forward to the virtual onsite, there's 2 case study questions to assess product ownership and critical thinking skills, each 45 minutes, as well as you'll meet with some internal stakeholders from different teams to ask you some different questions about product as well, which is also 45 minutes. Go to the next step. So just some final tips. Here are some final tips to always remember when you're interviewing. Definitely describe your thought process. Always ask clarifying questions, and definitely make sure to check the time. I'll now pass it over to Allie.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Thanks, Ariel, for passing it on to me. So we have a great panel of people today from our Foursquare Technical Women ERG, with which both Ariels talked about a little bit. It's our ERG at Foursquare for people of underrepresented genders in tech. So we have representation today from FTW members in engineering, product, and product design. We're going to share some insights around careers in tech, how we got our first jobs, tips for finding roles, moving roles, all of those things. Everyone on the panel has like really interesting experience, so we wanted to share everyone's sort of different perspectives. We're also going to try to leave some time at the end for your questions, so make sure to get your questions ready. You can enter them in that question box, I think in the chat as well, anytime you'd like. So I know we had a short intro to our panelists earlier. So first, I'm going to ask if everyone can do kind of a quick intro for themselves. And if you could also tell us about how did you get your first job? I'm just going to kick it off. So I'm Ali Rossi. I'm a data science lead here at Foursquare. I've been here like 3.5 years or so. And like I said, co-lead of Foursquare Technical Women. So in my role, I work with Foursquare's mobile phone location data and actually using that, aggregating it up to help derive some insights for our advertiser clients. Um, in terms of my first job, so it's actually not like an engineering story. I've actually toured a lot of different functions before kind of finding my way to data science, which I swear is like my final resting spot, my kind of favorite thing. But I started out in marketing. I moved into client service at a market research firm. Then I was a product manager for a while before moving into data science 3 years ago, actually moving internally at Foursquare. So to talk about my first job, I was actually a marketing assistant at a branding agency, so very different from what I do today. If I remember correctly, I found the job online, like on a job board, and I just applied to it along with like a lot of other marketing assistant jobs. But the thing that I like always remember from that is the hiring manager told me later on, like, oh, we had received so many applications for this marketing assistant role, but on my resume, I put this experience where I worked in London for like 6 months after college because I was just really interested in traveling. So they actually said, oh, that stood out to us. It was just something different on the resume. So I think like just the lesson in that for me is like taking the opportunity to do things that are interesting to you or have some experiences that you might not think are helpful. Like my mom really was mad at me for doing that. She said, you need to get a job, not like go traveling. But that actually helped me and like I made it part of my story and it was a way of differentiating myself. So Nana, do you want to tell your story? Introduce yourself and just tell the story of how you got your first job.
Hi, I'm Nana. I work as a software engineer on the visits backend team here at Foursquare. We basically work with like the movement data that Ariel was explaining, and this is actually my first job. I've been here for a little bit over a year. I graduated and I was applying to a bunch of jobs, various job boards and stuff, but I found this one on LinkedIn and I kind of applied just on a whim because usually I was applying straight through the like website that whatever company I was applying for, and I don't know, I had low expectations for applying through some other website, but I actually got a response and I was like very surprised and started interviewing, and yeah, I'm so super happy to be here. But yeah, this is my first job out of college and I did study computer science, so I kind of had a pretty straightforward path with being in tech.
Awesome, thanks, Nana. I think Andrea, you use LinkedIn as well. Do you mind introducing yourself and maybe talking about your first job, how you got it?
Yeah. So yes, I did get this job on LinkedIn, but this was not my first job. I am a product designer here. I've been here for almost a year, and I work on our consumer apps and our design system that's used across our enterprise marketing products. A little bit about my role. So as a product designer, our goal is to be able to solve problems through user-centered thinking. So putting the user's goals and their experience at the forefront of our solutions and the features that we build. On a day-to-day, that can look like user research, wireframing, testing, and just working with engineering and product managers to just gather feedback and implement designs. So I graduated in 2020 from UCLA right into the pandemic, and the original plan was to accept an offer for a full-time job from my internship that I was doing in college. And because of COVID, that didn't really pan out the way I planned. So I did everything you could think of. I started to just like network, wrote LinkedIn posts and articles, and applied to like hundreds of jobs, and I just didn't really see any luck in that. And so I kind of took a break from applying and started to do some freelancing projects instead to try to gain that real world experience that I saw a lot of people looking for, as well as like build up some of my soft skills. During that time, a recruiting agency reached out to me, and I ended up getting a contract role that turned into a full-time position through that recruiting agency.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrea. And Tansy, I know you have like a really interesting non-traditional story. Do you mind introducing yourself and telling that story of how you got your first role?
Yeah, so I'm Tansy. I work on the engineering tooling team. So my current job is to write the software that makes all of our engineers happier and more productive at work. But I got here in a really roundabout fashion. I tried twice in 2 different schools in 2 different countries to take a CS class, and they were both so awful that I went and did completely different things in college. So my highest qualification now is in equine management, which you can imagine is super useful now. I had a whole bunch of different jobs. I used to climb trees and play with chainsaws. I worked at a place that built trains. I once took apart and put back together an entire particle board factory with quite a lot of help. But yes, that was fun. Yeah, and eventually I was back in the States and I was visiting friends and I had a part-time job at a cafe, and one of my regulars was trying to teach his boss calculus over their morning coffee, and I kept calling out the answers. So he asked me out, and then he gave me linear algebra homework on our first date and graded it on the second date, and then started teaching me to program. So we are now married and we've been together like 12 years. But that was how I initially got into writing software. And one of the things that he really helped me with, because I was having so much trouble getting my foot in the door at companies, I was sending out so many resumes and I was getting 0 response back because there was just no relevant experience on my resume. So I started contributing to an open source project. And the one that I started with was called Pants, which is the build tool that Foursquare uses to improve productivity. And I spent quite a while contributing to that. And I asked the people that I was working with on that open source project for references. And they gave me a couple of written references, which I then attached to my resume, and I started getting better response. But one of those people was the then CTO or director of engineering here at Foursquare. So when I applied to Foursquare with his reference attached to my resume, I got an interview and I got the job. So a bit roundabout, but yeah, I got here via open source.
That's great. And you never know who's going to impact your career like that. Very cool.
Yes.
Great. And Pooja, do you mind introducing yourself and talking about how you got your first role?
Absolutely. So my name is Pooja. I am the product manager for our targeting product at Foursquare, specifically audience and proximity. So we build a product that allows advertisers to better target consumers based on location data. I've been at Foursquare for about 4 months now. I'm really enjoying it so far. And my first job out of college, I actually was part of like a sales operations team in a corporate finance department at a tech company. So I was an econ major in college, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do because econ is so broad. I ended up getting an internship in college at a startup, they asked me what I wanted to do, and I said, well, what do you need me to do? And they said, oh, we need you to work on like Salesforce. I said, great. So when I was looking for jobs post-college, I still didn't know what I wanted to do, and it turns out my internship worked very well with sales operations. So I became a sales operations analyst, and a couple of years in an actual work environment, I got to like better understand different teams and how those teams interact and what they're doing. And I realized then that where I really wanted to be was product. And so I took a series of incremental steps to end up in product.
That's great. Do you mind telling us a bit more about how you navigated that? Like, what were those steps that you took to get into product? It's a great story.
You know, I think it's really interesting because I think like everybody's sort of who ends up in tech, there's so many non-traditional paths to get there. And product management in particular, there is no set path to getting there. There's not some like perfect career path into it. And so one of the things that helped me a lot was once I understood like, okay, I want to work in product. Product is pretty big. There's a lot that you can do. You know, you can be product manager, you can go into product design, product operations, even within like the product management world, there are lots of different flavors of that job. So what I found really helpful was identifying people anywhere from like 5 to 10 years ahead of me in their careers and saying like, well, would I want that job eventually? Which is not something you have to stick to, but it's helpful because then you can sort of backtrack into like, okay, well, how did this person get to where they are now? And what skills do I need to eventually land a job like that? And so for me, I started off on more of the corporate finance side. I worked with our product team and I would volunteer to work with them proactively if they needed my help with any. I was like an Excel whiz, that was my thing. So if they needed help with anything Excel related, I was volunteered. And I started to build a relationship with them where, you know, one of the hiring managers on the product team, when he had an opening available on his team, he asked me if I wanted to move into his team. And he had developed a relationship with me where he knew I was smart, and even if I didn't have the exact product skill set coming into it, he was like, I can definitely train and teach you all of that stuff. And so that was really helpful for me. And then I moved into more of like initially a product marketing role actually, which I loved. And then as I got to know more about the product specific world, I was like, oh, actually, I'd love to work more closely with our engineering team. And so I thought, okay, well, how do I do that? I need to start volunteering for more technical adjacent projects. And so I also was very lucky because I had a series of supportive bosses with whom I could be candid with and say, like, I love this job. This is really where I want to be in the next couple of years. And like, how do I spend maybe 10% of my time trying to work on projects that will eventually help me get to that place while still adding value to the company? And I was able to sort of pick up some of the technical skills required to then move into like a PM role from PMM. So a lot of like baby incremental steps. I never had it fully planned out, but I was always thinking about like, you know, what's the next step and how do I get there and how do I spend the next like year trying to build up skills so that I can get to that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like I have sort of a similar story, but from moving from product to DS. Because getting into product, I didn't even know what product was. I was in client service, and I was just really in love with this one data product I used in client service. And I said, I want my next job at this company to be, working with this product. And there was a product management job open, and luckily enough, my former company trusted me enough to take that role. So that was like a fun learn on the job experience. But I think with DS, it was kind of more similar to your experience, where I kind of knew where I wanted to go. I was working at Foursquare at the time in product role, but kind of working on analytics data products. And so I basically like told everyone that this is what I'm interested in. Obviously, I love my job now, but this is like the future of what I want to do. And then people would try to help you out if you kind of express what you're looking to do. I would ask other product managers, does anyone need help pulling some metrics in SQL? When like my SQL was pretty terrible, but it would take me all day to try to pull like a very basic thing. But I was just trying to get experience, get known that like this is what I wanted to do. So I also did a Python class and a data science boot camp so that I'd kind of have some content to be able to talk about. And like, I didn't even know, like, where do you do data science? Like, where do you type it, you know? So I got to learn about notebooks and terminal and like where to write your code and things like that, and overview of like the basic models, you know, enough to be dangerous with the data. From there, I did a side project, just trying to teach myself more. And then that also gave me kind of content to talk about. So, you know, when I was kind of making my story about why I should be on the analytics team, once there was an opening on the team, I was able to say, you know, I have this product and client service experience. I really understand the clients and the business questions here. You know, I have this boot camp that I did and this side project I'm working on. You know, I also was trying to network with other data scientists. There was like a data club every week of people that just like data that would meet and like talk about different things and present stuff. So I was like, oh, I'll go to every meeting. And someone recommended that I talk to someone like that also was self-taught in data science. So I remember having this conversation with someone else in the company, just asking for advice. And then it ended up now he's actually my manager. So I think, you know, just asking for help and trying to network and ask around is really important, you know, to be able to move over. And I think also being able to tell that story about why your unique experience, when you might think it's not applicable, is actually like makes you very special for that role. But yeah, so I went on a long journey talking about myself. But Andrea, I know that you have a secret math background. Maybe you could talk about how you sort of navigated that transition from what you studied to what you do now.
Yeah, sure. So I had a similar early career path as Pooja. I did study math and economics. And my intention early on was to do marketing and business development. And so I had an internship for a startup, and I did that for about a summer. And then at the end of the summer, I realized that I wanted to do something a little bit more creative. At this point, I was almost a senior in college, and I felt like it was too late to change my major. And so I finished my degree in economics, and then I just taught myself design on the side through going to like student run design conferences, joining student organizations and product organizations where I could participate in student projects and practice the design thinking process. I did some personal projects of my own, some personal passion projects, ultimately to get enough, around 2 or 3 projects onto my portfolio. A majority of what I learned came from switching into a product design role at that startup. It was really tiny. It was like 3 people there. And I just hit them up and asked them if I could come back, but not doing marketing, as a product designer for them. And they said yes. So I used that role to learn on my own. And when I didn't know how to do something, I would literally just like Google it and try to figure it out. And then after that, I got another internship at a larger company with a more established design organization. And I think that was where I really started to kind of establish myself and learn the principles and understand UX design, because there were a lot of people who were more senior than me who I could learn from, who I could ask questions, and who I could just like observe. And so that's how I kind of, broke into product design. I also used freelancing as a way to, again, like gain that real world experience and learn how to work with other people and clients on a lot of different projects and a lot of different types of projects too.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. And you're talking a bit about freelancing, kind of side hustle things. I know, Nana, you have some good things to talk about in terms of some of the side project type things that you did before starting at Foursquare. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so after I graduated, which was also in 2020, I was kind of figuring out what I wanted to do. I felt like I needed to get some more experience. Most of the work that I had done was either an internship or school projects. And so I ended up signing up for this, I guess, organization, Major League Hacking. And they had kind of a fellowship program that was like, this was right when COVID, so they made it remote. People from like all over the world were joining. And so basically it was kind of like a mini hackathons, except instead of like with the time frame was like, instead of 2 days, like where you don't sleep or whatever, it was like 2 weeks part-time. So I was still job searching and stuff at the time. And we got themes every 2 weeks, and we had a group of other members, and we would come up with some kind of idea that we wanted to build, and then try to produce it within those 2 weeks. And that really helped introduce me to other technologies like mobile. Like we created a mobile app, which I had never done before, especially in school. I felt like a lot of my knowledge was very basic in general, but I didn't have a lot of resources or time to like delve more into specifics within like coding and programming. And so I also got to explore the front end side of web development and that kind of stuff. And I worked with other people where we kind of delegated roles, had stand-up meetings every day, made sure that like we were keeping on track. And so I thought that that was a great opportunity for me. It was like, I think maybe 8 weeks long. And so I got like 4 projects out of that. And then when I was interviewing with companies, I was able to discuss those projects. And I was able to explain like how we came up with the idea, what I contributed, what it was like working with other people, working in a remote environment, all of that kind of stuff. And I felt like that was a good motivator for me to branch out and learn and work on my skills than just doing just a solo personal project, because I found not a lot of motivation in doing that, especially when I was still in school. Like I was like, I don't have time to do something completely separate. And it also built a community with other people who were, they had a lot of different experience levels. Some people were just starting out, some people were in my situation, some people were doing a career transition. So it also kind of had some networking, and I'm still like in contact with that community, and they're always like trying to help their members find networking. And yeah, I really think that was a good step for me to take in terms of like leveling up my skills and leveling up how I talk about how I can handle situations and how I use my skills to really solve problems.
Yeah, that sounds so valuable. And I have to say, my like side project that I worked on never worked out. I like took on something way too hard and didn't really have people to ask for guidance. So I think the path you took is super smart and gave you a lot of benefit. And I know, like talking about working on things while interviewing, trying to kind of upskill and have things to talk about. I know Pooja, there's something that you kind of found while you were interviewing that led you to do some additional learning, right?
Yes, yeah. So I started at Foursquare in June, and I started casually job searching earlier in the year. And I had only ever worked in one company, sort of on one suite of products. And I started applying to sort of companies in different industries. And very famously, very early on in my job search, I got to the final round of a product management interview. And I was presenting a feature idea. And I sort of shot myself in the foot here, because my feature idea involved a machine learning model. And one of the interviewers reasonably asked me like, oh, well, like what inputs would you feed into this machine learning model? Can you talk about it a little more? And I don't come from a technical background, and I had never actually worked on a product that used ML before. And I think I came up with some sort of answer, but it was probably not a very good one. And I didn't end up getting the job. Who knows if that's the reason why. But for me, it was like a very important lesson that, like, you know, I've worked in product for a little bit, but there's always continuous like learning that needs to be going on, particularly as you're starting to understand, like, okay, well, these are the kind of products I want to work on. These are the kinds of like industries I want to be in. And so I started trying to, on the side, sort of get more into ML and data science to be a little bit more fluent in that, because I felt like that was something that was going to continue to come up and I needed to be able to answer those questions in interviews. And then it turns out that actually my role at Foursquare here, I do work with our data science team quite a bit, which is really great. And to further like sort of continue to develop that sort of technical skill set, I am using the Foursquare learning stipend that I think was mentioned earlier to take a data science course on the side that's specifically focusing on, like, you're a product manager, here's what you need to know about data science, and then like hopefully after that I might try and even move further than that into the field. But it's been really great, and I think what's really exciting is that, like, as you move through your career and you work with different teams, you really can pick up some of those like side skills. And like as a PM, you don't need to be super technical, but you do need to be able to talk about technical concepts and understand, like, you know, the more that you can understand those concepts and develop technical fluency, the better relationship you also build with your engineering team, which is such a key partner. And so it's been kind of an interesting journey for me. But talk to me in a couple months and maybe I'll have a better update on, you know, I'm an expert data scientist. Probably not. But.
Awesome. We should definitely talk about ML. That's really cool. And yeah, just in terms of like talking about school, so I wanted to kind of pivot, you know, asking everyone, what advice would you give, you know, say a student who's considering grad school or boot camps or other like non-undergrad types of programs? Like, is that something you considered? What are the pros and cons? Like, can you tell us a little bit about additional schooling and programs? If anyone who wants to take that one. Or I might call in Tansy because I know that you have an interesting program that you went through.
Yeah, so I didn't do any sort of formal technical school, but I went to a place called Recurse Center back in 2015. So it used to be called Hacker School. It's now Recurse, and it's basically a writer's retreat for programmers. So you end up for 3 months in a room full of people who are super enthusiastic about the stuff they're doing. And so there were people there who were writing their own operating systems or programming languages, or someone who was writing a chat and location sharing app for people who were in protests, so that you could communicate with other people who were protesting, but none of the data persisted, so no one could do any tracking for who was at this protest later. I wrote a BitTorrent client. It was pretty sweet. Yeah, so that was super useful. It's also something that I really recommend. Recurse has about 45 or 50% women or underrepresented genders and races. And their entire model is based around, it's free and they get paid when they place you in a job. Which also means that every time you're looking for a job after the fact, you can go back to them and be like, hey, what have you got? And they'll point you at a whole bunch of companies that they've vetted as being really nice places to work, which is great. So that was an enormous amount of fun. And I think that the reason they let me in the first place, because I was super new to programming at that point, was because I told them I was building logic gates in Minecraft to figure out how they worked under the hood. And apparently that was sufficiently nerdy to get me through the door.
Totally. I'm such a fan of just telling your story, the things that you like to do. It's always going to be like unique and bring something different, and like very honest. So I love that. Nana, I know you've talked a little bit about like considering degree and your views on that. Did you want to share that?
Yeah, so like I said, I studied computer science undergrad, and since I graduated during the pandemic, I was kind of like, what am I doing? Like, I had always like viewed myself as trying to get a job after graduating, but it was hard, and I thought a lot of my friends were doing grad school, and I was like, maybe I should do that. School sounds like kind of nice, like stable. But obviously it's really hard to get into grad school. And when I started looking more in depth in it, I was like, I think I need to spend more time. If this is something that I want to do, I want to spend more time thinking about it and thinking through this decision. And I'd already kind of realized that, at least for me, with an undergraduate degree in computer science, it wasn't really necessary for me to go to a graduate school to get a job or anything like that. I think and like obviously you don't even need an undergraduate degree, and many people do boot camps and that kind of self-learning, self-teaching. I personally didn't find myself thinking it would be worth the time and money to apply to graduate school, but I kind of have this mindset of, if there is something that I want to kind of delve more into, like more specific, that I wasn't able to learn undergrad, or I didn't feel like I had enough experience to do on the job, say that's like machine learning or algorithms or more front end work, whatever that is, um, computer graphics, that kind of stuff, that then I would probably want to consider applying to a master's program or something like that, because I think that would be a good a good pathway for me to really learn more, and maybe not have it be as self-taught and have more guidance. But since I'm still pretty early in my career, I'm still figuring out what I like. I'm still figuring out what direction I want to go. And so I'm still just kind of playing with everything, and I'm not ready to like fully commit or fully delve into that like field or education. And I like working. I think it's really fun, and um, I think it was really hard to find my first job, and it was like a lot of rejection and no responses. But you do get there, and I think persistence is key.
Totally. And I like totally agree with your viewpoint on like, wait till you figure out what you want to specialize in and if you want to specialize in something specific. And like, wait till you have a reason to go to school. Because I feel like, especially like with data science, it's a really competitive field and everyone feels like they just need that piece of paper, like you need the master's degree. But I feel like you really shouldn't go to school just for, the thing to write on your resume. Because like, I feel like you won't be as invested in it and you won't enjoy it. Like, I honestly, like, I thought about doing an MBA years ago, and I even sat in on an NYU class because I thought at the time like, oh, this is like what I should do. I think I was a product manager at the time, and I sat in on the class and I was like, oh, this, they just talk for 3 hours about business in China. Like, that's kind of, I don't want to have to debate with people for 3 hours. But I'm really glad I didn't end up doing it, because I was like, oh, I think an MBA will help me in my career. Now I actually started last fall doing an online master's with Georgia Tech. There's like a computer science degree that it's really great. It's this huge program and it's actually really inexpensive. I do use my Foursquare learning stipend with it. But like, that's the reason I'm doing it, is because I got into data science. I'm so happy here. But I started to recognize that for the path I want to go on, I'm a tech lead and I want to keep growing as a tech lead in the company and be like an expert for our clients and internal people. I want to come up with methodologies and like advise people on like our methods and insights. And I realized I was really missing that technical side. So I definitely have a little more business knowledge than I would have from my product experience. But like the actual like core like machine learning skills, like I didn't have. I just had that basic boot camp. So I identified that like I'm really interested in ML. I actually have a lot of fun in these classes, even though they're really hard. But like that's what really drives me. Like knowing that this will help me in the future, but also like it's super fun and I use the stuff I learned in school and I apply it to Foursquare data, which is extremely fun. So I'm really glad that I waited until the age that I am now, which I won't say it, to get a graduate degree, because I think this is like the right reason I'm doing it for, and the right area of things. And I might actually pass it to Pooja because I know that you consider an MBA also. So I want to hear that story. Oh, I think you're on mute, Pooja.
Hello, sorry, technical issues. I lost my mute button. Yes, yeah, I think product managers in particular, as you were mentioning, Ali, are like there's kind of a career point where I think a lot of people in the PM world think about an MBA. And it was something that I thought a lot about doing. The thing that helped me, and what I mentioned earlier, is like, it's always really helpful for you to understand what's the value of this degree in the real world. Because also an MBA is so expensive. It's a huge investment. And, I really wanted to make sure that it was going to actually really pay off in my career. For me, what made me ultimately decide against it was that I looked at a lot of the people who were a little bit more senior to me and started to understand, like, did they get an MBA? If they did get an MBA, I would ask them, like senior leaders who I'd gotten comfortable with and kind of developed a relationship with, I would ask their opinion on, like, do you think business school is worth it? I think what I found is that the world is changing quite a bit, in that, maybe 10, 15 years ago, it was MBAs were seen as what you needed to ever become a senior leader at a company. And that's really changed, and was kind of also validated by my recent job search, where I realized a lot of the companies I applied to really didn't care about if I had an MBA. They cared about my hands-on experience working on and building products. And so for me, it ended up not being the right decision. I think what's really great about everyone's experiences on this panel is that, school is a big time and financial investment. And so when it makes sense, it totally makes sense. But it's always really good to go into that decision with your eyes open and really understand what benefit you're getting out of it. Because in a lot of cases, doors aren't closed to you just because you don't have a formal degree. And like so many of us on this panel have gotten to where we are not through very traditional methods. And there's so many resources out here today that allow you to sort of break into the tech space without having to go through formal education. So it, for me, ended up not being the right path for me.
Awesome, thank you. So we're going to open up to questions soon. I just wanted to ask one more little lightning round question to wrap things up. So we want to hear, can you guys share any tips for finding a job? Something that's probably on a lot of people's minds listening in. Nana, what do you think?
As we've mentioned, and I'm sure you've heard, advice is networking is really important. Like I said, I found my current position at Foursquare through LinkedIn, and I also, when I was using LinkedIn and I was looking at job positions, a lot of the companies that I was looking at, I have my school connected with my LinkedIn, and it would say, oh, an alumni worked here or is working here, whatever. And I would just connect or send them a message or whatever, like, hi, we both went to the same college. I'm trying to get a job. Can you tell me more about what it's like working here? Or, like, give me any help. And a surprising amount of people did respond, because everyone wants to help each other out. And with that, I would say that your school's network is really helpful. My school had a program for alumni after 2 years to help them find a job, which meant either you could like talk to the career resource planning staff, and they would review your resume, talk through like your technique or whatever, your interviews, and give you advice on that. They also had begun a alumni kind of mentorship program, which I also participated in, which connected me with another alumni who was like 5 years older than me. So like, but also working in software engineering. And so just like kind of what my future would hopefully be. And we talked and we had like one-on-one meetings every couple of weeks. And she was super helpful in not only helping me figure out what I needed to work on in terms of interviews, the technical skills, networking, but also just being there to like vent to and be like, it's really hard to find a job. It's really hard to be in going into a space that you're underrepresented and you don't feel like your voice is necessarily heard, or you don't see a lot of people like you. And I think that community and support is also really key in not giving up and not like feeling like there's no way, because I definitely felt that way many times. And so I would definitely recommend any school, school networking, school alumni groups, that kind of stuff. I guess I also, when I graduated, or like my last semester, one of my professors in my class, I was taking a data science course, and he was in contact with, the course was like run by Google. It's kind of confusing, but somehow he was like in connection with various people, and he was like, oh, I was like one of the few like actual computer science majors in the class, so I was kind of also a TA in a sense, because he didn't really know what he was doing, but he, I think, really appreciated me, and he was like, one of the people who's like in the background of making this course like works at Sony, like I'd love to connect you. And so like also professors can be that like connection or help you out. And I just found that really, really supportive and really nice. And it didn't obviously come to like, I'm not working there obviously, but like the fact that he offered and that he saw like my hard work and he wanted to help me out was like really supportive. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like people really do just want to help. I know, Andrea, you have a good kind of networking story about how you got your internship, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I was gonna build off Nana's and say networking is really important, but don't think about it so transactionally. Like really get to know people and build a connection with them, like networking connection. But so for my internship, I went to this design hackathon run by our school, and the company that I interned for was there recruiting. So everyone's coming up to them to give them their resumes, give them their portfolios. And at that time, I had just started design or switching into design as a career, like I think that week. And I didn't have a portfolio. I didn't have anything to show. So I just went up and I asked about him. I just like asked him how he got into design, what he likes about it, what he doesn't like about it. And then I ended up getting his contact information, and I followed up with him again, not to get the job, but to share a portfolio once I had one and ask for his feedback, which he gave me, and then I implemented. And so I built this relationship there. And then when it came time for them to hire for an intern, he referred me without me even asking. So I think it's really important, and people notice when you actually care and are genuine in your questions and want to talk and want to learn, versus when you just want them to do something for you. And I think you really need to like take time building that relationship and connection before you do that. The other piece of advice I can give is like be creative when you are looking for a job. Like don't tie yourself to any one pathway or how you think things are going to work out. Like, I think recruiting agencies are a pretty underrated way of breaking into tech. Like people kind of get worried when they think about contract roles, but the truth is a lot of contract roles do turn into full-time roles. And even if they don't, they are great experience or opportunities for experience for the next full-time role that you're going to get.
Awesome. Thank you all for that great advice. I think we're going to move on to some questions from the audience. So just a reminder, you can type into the chat if you want to ask a question of our panelists while we have them here. I do see a first question here. So, oh, great. We got a second one coming too. We'll try to go fast. So I think the first one more towards the product type people here. Do you have any tips for, oops, I'm reading another one. Do you have any tips for people with non-tech backgrounds and how they can market themselves for product roles such as UX research and UX design?
I can start with that one. So I can talk about it from like a UI UX product design standpoint. I think the number one thing that you will need regardless of your level, whether you're doing entry or senior, mid-level, is a portfolio, which is just a showcase of the products or projects that you have worked on. It is okay when you're applying for entry roles to not have any real life, like actually shipped product projects. You can build your portfolio by doing student projects, by doing group projects, by doing your own personal ones, looking for freelance roles, anything that can just basically show that when you have you know what the design thinking process is and you can do everything in it. So you can do the UX research, you can wireframe, you know how to do testing, you can use the tools like Figma, Sketch, whatever it is. And then that you also can explain why you do the things you do, why you've made certain decisions, and how to apply that design thinking process in different scenarios and situations. So to start off, like, the portfolio is to apply to any design role, they will ask you for a portfolio. I think starting off 2 to 3 projects is totally fine. And again, they don't have to be any real world products, any real life products. Just show that you understand design thinking, that you know how to work with other people, that you can tell a story, and that you can explain your design decisions and articulate them well.
That's great, thank you. And actually we have another question that's kind of a follow on that one. So I might ask you, Andrea, they're asking for tips about building a portfolio on your own, which I think you gave, but also they'd like to know, how do you gather user information or recruit participants for user testing?
So if you do not have any budget, which is probably, I mean, likely for any independent projects, reach out on all of your networks. So LinkedIn, send out surveys there or ask people for time there, ask your friends. Now, I'm not saying like that's the best way to recruit participants because you do have some bias when you recruit people that you know, but for passion projects, for student projects, for anything that's not in the real world, like, be scrappy. Just ask your friends, ask around to see if anybody is interested in just helping. Ask for 30 minutes of their time. Try not to take too much. If you do have a budget, there are resources that you can use. Usertesting.com is one of them. There are a plethora of like user interviewing platforms that will help you recruit participants based on certain criteria that you put in. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And actually we have a special question just for Nana. It says, Nana, do you have any advice specifically for comp sci majors in their freshman year?
I would say, I mean, for my first year, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to major in. I was just taking some intro CS courses and seeing how I liked them, and I just happened to like them a lot. And I had known like this would be a possibility of a major. But within that, I also got, my school had like a great tutoring program, and I found that really helpful in terms of like really understanding the basic concepts. And then also I ended up being a tutor for like the next 3 years. And so I also think if you really want to nail down those like core fundamental programming concepts, it's really important to know how to teach them in a way as well, because if you're able to teach them, and if the person you're teaching them to is somehow able to understand you and learn from that, that kind of shows a lot in terms of your skills and your understanding. And I also would say that was also how I kind of, I guess, marketed myself when I was first, before, like, your first year, you don't necessarily have any internship experience or anything like that. So when I was applying to things, I would talk about that tutoring experience, which of course can only start like after your first semester, but like that's something, and you can really talk about teaching and like how you handle those situations. So I think that's kind of a less an experience that you can utilize for those interviews when you don't have maybe um, the most experience that they're really expecting. Also, hopefully they're not expecting too much because they know that you're a freshman. And then I would also say really connect with people. I loved my intro CS professor, and I talked to him all the time. He was super nice, super friendly to everyone. And I continued to talk to him throughout like my time there, and was able to ask him for a recommendation. And I just thought that was really nice. And then also there was a organization at my school that was specifically for like women slash underrepresented groups in tech. And so from the get-go, I was able to create a community, a support group, people to talk to, people to complain to, people to study with. And I found that really helpful, which I also like maintained through the rest of my time. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. So I'm going to go to our last question. What's your favorite thing about working at Foursquare? Okay, so I'll say mine quickly. I think just like there's a lot of freedom here in a lot of ways. So we've talked about like the flexible work and a lot of days off, which I love. But also I feel like it's the freedom like to explore things you're interested in. So like I mentioned, I've been learning some really cool stuff at school, and I'm like, oh, how do I apply that to Foursquare data? And like, this is a place where you can kind of follow an idea like that. Like I was like, oh, I want to cluster our users and create segments. And, you know, I feel like it would be useful to this side of the business, and we could do this with clients with it. And I had great stakeholders who were like, yeah, this is a great idea. Let me help you with that. And it's something we're actually like launching as a product to see how it does. Actually, Pooja was helping out with this one too. So it's just super cool that like you have the freedom. When I was at kind of bigger corporations, you don't have as much leeway to like explore things like that. So that's what I love. Anyone else want to jump in on that one?
I will. So I have I have especially good insight on this one because I initially started working at Foursquare in 2016, and I was here for 2 years, and then I went away and did a bunch of other stuff, and now I'm back again. And what brought me back was the people here. There are so many people in this company who are just awesome human beings who are doing really good work, and that I want to spend time with. It was also really helpful to me that since the pandemic, remote working has really opened up as a bigger option because I now live in the middle of nowhere in the Midwest on a farm, and I cannot bring my cows back to the city with me for work. So that's been really useful. But yeah, the people here are just amazing human beings.
Agreed. Anyone else want to jump in on that one?
I'll piggyback off of that one, of Tansy. I agree that the people make Foursquare really great. Everyone is super smart and super willing to pitch in and work on things, and everyone has really great ideas, like Allie's idea to launch this like new test product. So that's great, but I think also I think Foursquare in particular is very committed to creating that environment too. So you know, I've only been here for a few months, but like I've had an offsite for engineering and product in Seattle that I flew to. I'm actually here in LA. I just did a team specific offsite. I think it was mentioned before, we had Foursquare in real life, which was like 450 employees all in New York like 2 weeks ago. And so I love that remote work is an option for us, but I still really like that Foursquare tries really hard to foster a very like social and collaborative environment through committing to bringing people together in person and hosting lots of events. And so it's a really nice mix of those two things for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Well, thank you everyone so much. I don't know, Ariel, if you wanted to jump in and say goodbye to everyone.
Yes, I just thank you so much for hosting such a wonderful panel, Allie, and to all the panelists for your insights and guidance. Thank you to Ariel for sharing all of your interview tips, and to everyone for joining. We really appreciate you joining us here today and spending time here. And we'd love to stay in touch, so please feel free to visit us at location.foursquare.com, and we'd love to hear from you. So thanks. Take care, everybody.